today I am very, very excited to have both Anissa and Mark joining me on this webinar. Anissa, who is a Director of International Admissions and Operations. Hi, Anissa.
Hi, Stella. Thank you for having us today.
Thank you very much for joining us. And we also have Mark today, Mark Rogers, which is International Admissions Coordinator at Herzing University. Hi, Mark.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much. And myself, I'm Salo. I am Operations and Compliance Manager here at InUni. And today we're covering a very, very important topic, which is visa and compliance. So we're going to go through quite a few topics, from how to apply for an F1 visa, what you should know about the documents, what to do and not to do in the interview, the most common mistakes students do. We're going to talk about CPT and OPT, as well as how to maintain your visa if you're successful in receiving one. And at the end of the session, we're also going to do a bit of a Mythbusters, where we're going to speak about the main misconceptions students and agents have about studying in the US. And we're going to speak about what's actually true and what is just a myth. But without further ado, I would like to pass it to Mark with the topic of how to apply for an F1 visa.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So, as she said, today we'll talk about that. So let's talk about the steps to applying for an F1 visa in the U.S. So the first step is to receive an I-20 from the university. Next would be to pay your CVIS fee. The next step would be to complete the DS-160 form. Okay. After that would be to pay your DS-160 fee, schedule your visa interview, typically at the nearest U.S. embassy, but this can be scheduled at any U.S. embassy. Attend your visa interview, bring your required documents, of course, and answer questions. Receive your visa decision of an approval or denial. And next would be to schedule your travel plans to the U.S. Okay, and skip to the next slide. Thank you. So talk about the document list. Okay, so first would be your passport, a previous passport, as well as your current passport, your I-20 form, which would be signed and dated by the student, the CVIS payment confirmation receipt, your DS-160 confirmation. You'll want to keep all confirmations going forward, financial documents, bank statements, and so forth, and your letter of acceptance from the university. The I-20 stage, okay, how do we get there? The first step in the process would be for a student to submit documents so that they could receive a conditional admissions letter from the university. The next stage would be to sign 4 enrollment documents: the enrollment agreement, the accreditation disclosure, the consumer information disclosure, and the international student statement of understanding, as well as submit your financial statements and affidavit if required. About CVIS. So CVIS is the Student and Exchange Visitor Information System, which is basically a web-based system that maintains information on non-immigrant students and exchange visitors in the United States. Okay. International students typically will require an F1 visa. Most will be on an F1 visa. It is necessary to have the I-20 form to pay the CVIS I-901 fee. Okay. What is the I-901 fee? This is a fee typically associated $350 that a student will pay. Must be paid to progress your visa application. Okay, and how can it be paid? The most common way would be to go online to www.fmjfee.com. Also, SEVP will accept third-party payments, meaning that, of course, someone like a parent or someone else would be eligible to make that payment. The DS-160 application form, of course, as we covered previously, is a form that the student needs to complete in order to apply for their visa. After the form is complete and submitted, it's time to pay the non-refundable $185 fee and schedule the visa appointment. Once the form is completed, you must print and keep the DS-160 barcode page that you'll need to take with you to your interview. Now it's time to schedule your F1 visa appointment. Applicants should be scheduling visa appointments should also should do so as soon as possible. As all of you know, this can there can be delays and can vary in time depending on the country in which a student is applying for a student visa. Next slide, please. How to apply for an F1 visa in recap. Get accepted to an SEVP approved university, receive your I-20, pay your I-901 fee, complete the DS-160 visa application and pay your fee, schedule and attend your biometric screening and visa interview. Bring the necessary documents that will be required by the embassy.
Thank you so much, Mark. I know that for many students, when you just start your student journey towards your visa, it might look very complicated and it might look like a lot of steps, but with the help of Mark now breaking every step by step, really, I hope it's a lot more clear. And now that we know how to get to the visa interview, let's speak about how we should prepare before the visa interview and what's the most common mistakes that we see happening. So one of the first things I would like to remind everyone, or perhaps just let everyone know, is that there are no set questions. So the visa interviewers don't really have any set questions. Every interview is different. Every applicant, every student is different. Every situation is different. Therefore, every interview will be as well. I hear a lot of students and even agents trying to look for a perfect script, for a perfect answer to each question. However, we cannot prepare for something that doesn't exist. So you cannot prepare a script for a script that doesn't exist. So something to really remember, there are no set questions. Every interview is different. Now, the purpose of this interview is to understand whether the student intends to study in the US, to settle there, or travel back to their home country after studying, and can the student afford to stay in the US for the duration of their studies. And just a reminder, as Mark also mentioned, for the most up-to-date list of required documents, please check your local US consulate website. Now, of course, there's no set questions, but we can actually prepare before the interview, and we really should prepare before the interview. Now, studying, and especially studying abroad, is a very exciting opportunity, and it's also an investment in your future. You wouldn't just one day wake up in the morning and think, I should buy a car, and then go outside, go to the first dealership and buy the first car you see. You would do your research. Now, it's the same with the university, isn't it? So when students ask me, what kind of research should I do about a university? What kind of research should I do about a course? It's really your own research that's the most important. It's what drives you, what made you choose the institution. So also think about your finances, tuition fee and living expenses, and as well as your sponsor details. I know that depending on which country you're coming from, speaking about finances can be a bit daunting, or simply put, a bit uncomfortable. However, a visa interview is not a place where you should be shy to speak about your finances. Speak freely and be prepared for these questions. Also, a mistake I see some students do, especially the younger ones, when the sponsors are parents, and the student just tells the visa officer that they don't know the tuition fees or living expenses to the point because the parents are sponsoring them. Even if somebody else is sponsoring you, even if somebody else is sponsoring the student should still know the tuition fees and living expenses, as it is their future it's invested in. Also, remember to speak in US dollars, not in the local currency. I would love to say don't be nervous before the interview, but I know most of the students will be nervous before the interview. That's just the way nature is. So don't get even more nervous when on the spot you could be asked to convert currencies. Always speak in US dollars. Think about motivation and interest. So why did you choose the study program? Think about presentation as well, such as dress code and being on time. So dress code should be at least semi-formal or formal, and being on time means being on time. And I will be very specific. Being on time, my advice is be as early as possible. Better early than sorry. You don't want to be, you just saw how long the journey is to visa. You don't want to miss out on a visa just because you were late and you got a visa refusal just because you were 5 minutes late. Think about your social media, and we will speak about that later in the presentation, and document preparation. With the documents, just a reminder, do check on the embassy what is needed. Look at the list as Mark provided in the beginning of presentation, but also if you're bringing more documents, do not give them to the visa officer unless you're asked. If you're asked to give a document, do present a document, but don't just go offering your whole bunch of clean documents to every person you see. At the same time, make sure that they're not wrinkled, that you didn't just take them out of the pocket, but they're actually presentable and well prepared. Living in the US, think about your travel arrangements, campus accommodation, dependents, etc., future plans. And when we speak about future plans, these are the plans about your future after the studies, and how does studying at this university at the score actually ties in with your future plans. Think about the institution details, such as unique selling points of the institution, study models. You can go as far as alumni, professors, etc. Really, as we spoke about the research in the beginning, it's up to you what actually interests you and why did you choose this university and this course. So you cannot do too much research. You can definitely do not enough research. Remind yourself about your personal details, such as work and study history, and what is unique about you. It might seem silly that I'm writing here work and study history. If you're a student and you have the study history and you have this work history, of course you know what you studied and where you worked. But again, chances are you might be a bit nervous in the interview. And chances are, if you're not 18 anymore, you might have to think for a minute, when was it when I graduated? Was it 2023 or was it 2022? Don't put this extra stress on you. Remember, look through your documents, remember when did you graduate and what work experience, when was it, and so on. So you would be able to answer confidently when asked. Think about travel details as well. So previous international travel and international travels of your family members. So what are the common interview mistakes that students do? Number one is not enough research. So applicants are expected to have a comprehensive understanding of the university, the chosen study program, and the country they plan to study in. Lack of research can give this impression that the applicant is not interested or committed to their educational journey, leading to an interview fail. So research is really, really important, but as important is not providing scripted or generic answers. So scripted students are those who have rehearsed their answers to common interview questions without truly understanding or internalizing the content. Similarly, students providing very generic answers often give vague, impersonal, or cliched responses that do not offer any real insight into their individual circumstances, aspirations, or reasons for pursuing education abroad. A long explanation, a lot of words, but what does it actually mean? So I like to say that there is a reason why actors worldwide are paid so much money. It's because it's extremely hard, practically impossible, to take somebody else's words and speak them as if they are your own without no one noticing. It's the same with visa officers. When a student is scripted or over-prepared, not speaking naturally, they sound robotic. And visa officers are trained to know that. They can see that from the first answer. And sometimes I hear the students say, I only said one sentence and I got rejected. Right. And was that sentence a script? Because if it was, and chances are it was, that could be a good reason to reject the student. So students that are scripted, they sound robotic. But also, myself and my team, we do hundreds of interviews a week. And at this point, we heard it all. We heard all scripts. I'm not sure where the scripts are coming, but even if it's ChatGPT, we can hear it doesn't sound natural. And we heard it all before. Even the structure of an answer, of which sentence comes after which, you wouldn't believe how commonly the answers are scripted. It's also remember that I know it's a hard line, not over-prepared, but done your research. But really what you need to do is not seek for the script, but seek for research yourself. If you do the research yourself, chances are you're not going to be scripted, and good chances are you're not going to be scripted. Speak naturally, and when speaking, remember that don't jump to the next question that's not asked yet. I see students doing this mistake when they're asked, for example, why did you choose Herzing? And they have a really good answer, why Herzing? But then at the end of that answer, they straight away start talking about why this course and why US and how did they going to travel there. Answer only the question you're asked. Try to practice your answers to be around 4 to 5 sentences. So not yes or no, because there might not be any follow-up questions, but also not 17 paragraphs about your lifestyle and your story. Like in Hollywood movies, let me tell you how I got here. Nobody needs to know how you got here. What they need to have is the answer to the specific question you're asked. Now, my advice, have 4 to 5 sentence answers. I know it might be daunting. How do I do that? Well, it's pretty simple, really. Go to the mirror and practice. Go to your friends and practice. Go to your parents and practice, or even practice with us. Practice sometimes does make perfect. And remember, just by speaking out loud in English, especially if it's not your first language, it will help you be a bit more confident. One of the hacks one of our students shared with us is that she listened to radio in US before going to US interview, just to get used to the accents and the speed of speaking, because learning English and not being exposed to the local speakers is very different. So do whatever works for you. But remember, script is something that will get you failed. It's better to actually tell the visa officer, I'm sorry, I really didn't do the research about it, I'm sorry, instead of speaking about a script that they keep on hearing over and over and over again. There's also generic answers. Generic answers are the ones that could fit any university, any country, or any course. For example, I could say that I would love to study in US because it's a very progressive country. I would love to study in Germany because it's a very progressive country. I would love to study in UK because it's a very progressive country. If you have a sentence and you can insert any location in that sentence and the sentence still works, that's a generic answer. That's a very easy way to check it. It's also when I hear that I chose to study in this university because it has a library. Well, show me a university in US that doesn't really. So avoid generic answers as well, because it shows that you are underprepared. It also shows that you perhaps didn't really think about your future too much, or your goals are perhaps not studying. So I have an example here as well. For example, that's an answer of a student. After completing this course, I want to work at Nestle, Facebook, or Google, which is by itself a good answer. However, again, as we discussed in the beginning, visa officers don't have scripts. You can learn by heart answers to 105 questions. And then the visa officer we're going to ask you question number 212. It's impossible to prepare all the answers to all the possible questions in the world. And here in the example, for example, they could be asked, why these companies? Have you tried applying to a job there? Which country are these offices located in? How this course will help you achieve it? And so on and so on and so on. So there are really infinity of questions you could be asked. If you did your own research, if the student does their own research, they will be able to keep up with the conversation, which is also a very important point. I see students preparing for a visa interview as if it's a test with the right and wrong answer. An interview, like any other interview, be it a job interview or US visa interview, is not a test. It's a conversation, and you should be able to hold this conversation. Right. Poor communication is also a big reason students fail. So that's an inability to effectively communicate and convince the interviewers about the applicant's genuine intentions, academic goals, and plans after completing the study program can impact the outcome of the interview. So again, my advice would be practice, 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 because if you haven't spoken in English, even if you're really fluent in English and have the best scores and you're very confident, but let's say you just didn't speak in English for the last month, it does get rusty. So practice, even if it's with yourself, even if it's your friend, do practice. Information inaccuracy. So providing false, misleading, or inaccurate information, whether it be related to previous visa history, family ties in the US, etc. And one of the main questions I hear students ask is, what if I do have a previous visa rejection? Well, my answer would be number one, don't panic. We saw students with 5 previous visa rejections getting a visa on the 6th time. It's always possible. Number one, what you shouldn't do is lie about your visa rejection, because what's going to happen is that they will see you're lying, and not by your intonation or words, but on the system, they will see that you have this visa rejection and you will be deemed as lying, and lying will give you a visa rejection. And you probably already know there's different types of visa rejections, and some of them are easier to come back from than others. You don't want the lying one, trust me. That would close all your possibilities to go into US. So look at your previous visa rejection and try to understand why have you been rejected, and think of how did the circumstances change since then. At the same time, remind yourself of what type of visa, to which country, and when were you rejected. And that's information accuracy. So just a reminder again, you don't want the visa for lying, really. And one thing you should really, really not do is hold information or lie to the visa officer. And with that, hopefully you will be more confident preparing for your visa interview. And hopefully, if you do get your visa accepted, I'll pass it to Anissa to speak about tips and tricks of maintaining your visa status. Anissa?
Thank you. And thank you, Sala, for that really, really detailed explanation of how the visa interviews go. I would like to add that, you know, a lot of students hear a lot of things about visa interviews, and all of the things that you have said are things that I have heard myself happen and heard students get denied their visa over. And that scripting is just number one. So really, I hope you guys can hear Sala out, maybe get a recording of this and go back and listen to it again, because following her tips and tricks there, I think are going to be really helpful in increasing your chances of getting a visa interview. So when your visa is approved, I would like to talk to you about how to help maintain your visa status. So at Herzing, we actually have 3 people that work on campus that work with students to help them maintain their visa status. At most universities, those individuals are called DSOs. That stands for Designated School Official. Mark referenced the SEVIS system earlier, the Student Exchange Information Visitor System or something. I can't remember exactly what it is, but that system, the DSOs are who are able to log into that system, see the student records, adjust the student records. We write I-20s, which was, again, the first step that Mark told you about for the visa interview, is getting that I-20. And so making sure that SEVIS is adequately and properly updated is how those DSOs make sure that students, that's the first step in helping a student maintain status. But there's a lot of things about maintaining your status that DSOs cannot control. And so we're going to talk about a couple of those things. The first thing when it comes to maintaining your visa status is you want to make sure that you arrive in the US no more than 30 days in advance of the start date of your program. For example, classes at Herzing in the fall start on September the 3rd, so you would come in no earlier than 30 days before that. If you come in 30 days prior to that, you will be denied entry to the US based on your F1 visa. You would need to have some other type of visa in order to be able to enter. And then that really turns into a big mess with having to change your status and all these other things while you're already here. So please be sure that you plan your travel accordingly. You've got 30 whole days in there that you can figure out a good time. I know sometimes picking a travel date Finances are important because flights can be really expensive. When you arrive could be important. Maybe you're flying with a friend who also came on a visa and you guys are trying to fly together, but just make sure that you don't land in the US any more than 30 days before the start date of your class. A very common reason why students have visa challenges or challenges in maintaining their visas is work restrictions. Students in the United States on an F1 visa have very limited options for which that they can work. It's part of the reason why students have to supply their financial support statements in advance of being approved for their visa. This is the government in the United States making sure that students have the resources to be able to support themselves either on their own or through a sponsor to be able to attend school, pay their tuition, and pay any of their living expenses, rent, food, clothing, any of those needs that a student has while they're here studying, medical things, all of those things. So very, very limited options for students to work. So students are allowed to work on campus up to 20 hours per week, and most universities have a few positions. They're not unlimited, but most universities have a few positions on which students can do that kind of work. You are not allowed to work off campus during your enrollment, except for in the case that you're on CPT, which is what we'll talk about later, which is essentially an internship usually available at the end of your program. And then after graduation, you're allowed to work on OPT. Again, we're going to cover that in a little bit later. Mark is going to talk about that, but that's off-campus work after graduation. Students who bring F2 dependents with them should know that their F2 dependent is not allowed to work on campus, off campus. There's no internship, no OPT. So under no circumstances can someone on an F2 visa work. Also, campus presence is the next point here. Very important that international students know they must be present in the US for class, and not even just present in the US, but present in class. We do have to actually attend classes. Some classes, you may have a few classes throughout your program that are going to be online, but even in the case of those online classes, you still need to be in the United States. Travel is allowed during school breaks. In the case of family emergencies, sometimes we can authorize it as long as students don't violate the attendance policy, but that's something that's handled on a case-by-case basis. And full-time enrollment is required for 2 terms every year. So students that are starting this fall, you will need to attend in the fall and then attend in the spring. And if you would like to take the summer semester off, you would be authorized to do so. And lastly, maintaining your student visa is maintaining academic progress. So this is going to class, making good grades in your class, completing your assignments and all of those things that are important in your actual study here at Herzing, and making what we call satisfactory academic progress, which is actually something that is measured every single semester. And then in addition to these things that you see here on the screen, conduct can be very important too. So just general good conduct, not getting into any trouble, either on campus or off campus. The campus personnel, we really haven't ever had very many issues with this, but it does happen. I have heard situations where it does, but also all of these things and having good conduct and good intentions while you're here in the US. And so I'm sure you've all heard there's a brand new social media screening process in the United States. Anyone who's interested in coming to the US on an F1 visa right now is probably paying very close attention to the information that's coming out in the news and over different media channels. I will tell you, we are still, even as officials at universities, learning a lot about this process itself. So a lot of it we are learning as it happens. We're noticing a lot of different embassies are doing things differently, but in the big picture, what is happening now is that the United States is requiring a screen of all student social media in advance of awarding an F1 visa. And it starts with the DS-160 application for your student visa that Mark referenced earlier. So when you're filling out the DS-160 application now, it's going to ask you for all social media handles that you have used over the last 5 years. So you'll add all of those handles, what platform it was on, if it was Facebook, Instagram, X, any of the social media channels that are out there. And the officers can review your social media profiles for a lot of reasons. So they're looking to try to verify your intent and coming to the USA. They're trying to verify that what they see on your social media is consistent with what you're saying. It doesn't mean you need to go post anything about I'm going to the USA or I want to go to the USA. They just want to make sure that they don't see anything that says I'm permanently moving to the USA and I'm going to apply for my F1 visa so that I can get there. They just want to make sure they don't see anything that's inconsistent with the requirements or the intentions of an F1 visa. Looking for content that contradicts your stated purpose of travel. They don't want to see like ties to the US, like, this huge family group or whatnot that you have here. And then also, as I said earlier, concerning behavior may raise some red flags as well. And then lastly, students are advised to maintain professional, honest, and consistent profiles, meaning if you don't post very often, don't just start putting a bunch of posts up in preparation for your F1 visa. So they will be able to see right through that. So, some people post on social media every day. Some people, like me, I hardly ever post on social media. But if you have your visa interview coming up, it would be crazy to go onto your social media and start posting things about how much you love this particular university or how much you love the USA or whatever. They're looking for consistency across your page and any content that you have published. So in preparing your social media, you want to be sure that you have, again, prepared all the social media usernames or handles that you've used in the last 5 years. Do not leave any out, and do not go and delete your page to try to avoid sharing it. They will find it. And as Sala said earlier, you do not want to be denied your visa for the lying reason.
I think we might have lost Anissa here for a second until she joins back. Just a reminder that really when you prepare your social media, is the same as that even when you're applying to a job interview, your social media could still be checked. So it's important as an individual, as a professional, to maintain your social media to be respectful and consistent if you want to be a respected adult. While we wait for Nissa to come back, also remember to avoid deleting content, as she mentioned, and remember to review posts carefully and remove or archive anything that could be interpreted as hostile or extremist, or really, if don't post it in the first place. But I see we have Nissa back. Apologies, Nissa, I did cover a few points. Well, it seems you had a technical issue. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have no idea what happened there. But thank you for covering that slide. You did a beautiful job.
All right, then let's go to the next one, which is content.
Yeah, so again, you want to be sure that your content aligns with your stated reason for entering the US, or again, the lack of content. So I want to stress, don't go add content just for the sake of adding it. It should be consistent, again, with, kind of your history. So if you're posting about coming to the US or applying for an F1 visa or something along those lines, you want to be sure that all of your intentions are in that of just applying for an F1 visa. And as a reminder, an F1 visa is a non-immigrant visa to the US. So the intention of your F1 visa is to come to the US to get your education of the program that you're applying for, maybe work for a period of time on OPT, and then return to your home country. That is the intention of the F1 visa, and that is what the visa officers are looking for, to be sure that they don't feel that you are doing something outside of that. So any online activity that you have should also reflect your genuine academic interest, that you want to go to school, not that you're coming here to work or anything like that, but that you are going to be working in this chosen career field, that you're focused on educational goals. And it doesn't mean that your profile needs to be overly formal, but you want to be sure that you don't contradict anything. So for example, if you've applied to an MBA program in the United States, you shouldn't post anything about this new nursing program that you've applied to and that you're really excited to start a nursing program at the school, because that's very contradictory, for example, of what you are doing. So also, no post suggesting long-term plans to work or immigrate permanently, which I think I referenced just a few minutes ago, or engage in any activities not permitted by your visa, like unauthorized employment. All of these things can raise red flags during the vetting process, and this includes jokes or casual comments that could be misrepresented or misinterpreted, rather, by someone who is just reading your page and doesn't know you. You may be a really funny person, and all of your followers may know that everything that you post is a joke. But whenever the embassy officers get on and take a look at your page, they don't know you like that. They're not going to be able to determine that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Anissa. And with that, we're going to go to CPT and OPT. Mark, would you like to lead us through that, please?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. So the fun part of the process, CPT. So CPT, or Curricular Practical Training, is basically a fancy way of saying an internship. Okay, so students will be eligible to do an internship as part of their academic journey. The experience must be related to your major that you have chosen. The experience can be paid or unpaid, depending on the experience that you have an opportunity to do. And you must have completed at least one academic year of study before being eligible to apply for CPT. Next slide, please. Thank you. OPT, or Optional Practical Training, is work authorization for temporary employment related to your major that is completed post-graduation, okay? Most students apply for 12 months of post-OPT or post-completion OPT, with the exception of students who have applied to a STEM program. If you have applied to a STEM program, then you could be eligible for up to a 2-year STEM extension, okay? Next slide. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and compare the two side by side. So CPT is part of your program or an internship that is included. OPT is done post-graduation. Work start. In order to apply for CPT, you must have a job offer first. As far as OPT goes, you can apply for OPT without a job offer. Authorization for CPT is done by your DSO at your university, so it is quicker, whereas OPT is approved by the USCIS. Both experiences can be paid or unpaid, depending on the experience. CPT would be a part-time experience while you're in school, and once you are on a break, you can go ahead and do full-time. OPT is a full-time post-graduation work experience. Impact on OPT. Okay, so this is something that students don't often think about. They ask for day one CPT, thinking that that is in their best interest. But 12 plus months of full-time CPT would mean that a student would not be eligible for an OPT experience. The OPT experience, of course, is where a student is taking everything that they have learned and putting it to use, and hopefully will lead to a better working experience than an internship. So we want to keep that in mind. And then OPT is up to 12 months unless you're in a STEM program, which would be eligible for an extension.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark, so much. I hope that it's a lot more clear with OPTs and CPTs. And let's go now to the last session of which is Truth and Myths, understanding the F1 visa process. Before we go there, though, I do believe I by accident skipped one social media slide. I do apologize, Anissa. If you want to add anything about social media or perhaps any myths you're hearing in the market with social media, I'll give the floor to you as well here.
I think the only thing that was really on the slide talked about, making sure you have a positive digital footprint. Anything that you post out there online is, as you stated earlier, it's always subject to scrutiny, not just by a U.S. visa officer, but we find here in the U.S. that students are not even just students, but when you apply for a job, even, whomever you're applying for the job with may go back and review your social media. And if they feel like you're, the way you post, the way you talk, maybe you're, that how you're okay with posting, very controversial subjects online, that may become a problem in the office. That may prevent you from being able to get a job in some cases. And one thing I think that I didn't mention is that before you go to your visa interview, you do need to be sure that you set your profile to public. That's the only way that the visa officer is going to be able to actually take a look at the content on your page. If it's not on public, you're automatically going to get denied. And so I recommend putting it on public as soon as you schedule your visa interview, because as I mentioned before, we're finding that the process in which embassies are reviewing social media records, it's varying by embassy. So some we find are reviewing it before the interview actually happens, and some are waiting until after the interview. So you need to go ahead and put your pages on public as soon as you schedule that interview, because it could really be reviewed at any point before your interview and after. And don't remove the public access until you've either received your approval or you've received your denial. Because again, we don't really know exactly when, and every embassy is doing it a little bit different. I'll say, I know people may have mixed feelings about that, and that includes me. My Facebook and Instagram profiles, they're all on private as well, as many, I would say probably, I don't know, unless you're a social media influencer, probably, 60 to 70% of the world's Facebook and Instagram and whatnot profiles are on private. Unfortunately, getting it onto that public setting is the only thing that's going to let the visa officers review it so that they can make a decision on if they feel that your social media and your behavior there is consistent with what we are looking for students in the U.S.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anissa, for adding. This is really, really important. So 2 things to really remember. Internet is forever. So remember, don't post anything. Even if you're not applying to US visa, do not post anything that would make you embarrassed later in your life. And also do keep your accounts public. And remember, it does take a few days for the public account to actually start appearing. So don't wait until the very, very last moment to make them public, and don't turn off the public until you get your visa. So these are really, really important advices. Thank you so much, Anissa, for reiterating. All right, now let's go to myths that we keep on hearing in the market and see what is actually true and what is just a myth. So one of the things we keep hearing is I can work full-time on my F1 visa wherever I want. And we even hear because my friends do it so, or I see other people doing that in US. Anissa, is that true? And are you hearing this as well?
So it is absolutely not true. And so I think something that is important to remember is that you may have a friend that's in the US that is studying, that is working full-time. But you also have to understand that there could be little tiny things that are different about their case that is not the same in your case. And so I can give you a few examples of that. Maybe your friend is in the US maintaining their F1 visa, but maybe they also have TPS, which is temporary protected status, which is not available for all countries, but is available for a short list of countries that have F1 students in the US, or no, you don't even have to be on an F1, but where it would allow that said person to work regardless of what their visa status is. That TPS work permit gives them additional permissions to work. Also, there's something called a hardship work authorization in the US, and this could be the case of a student. And it is, I will say, it is very hard to prove. We do not see very many of these. I've actually not seen one myself in probably the last 7 or 8 years. But in the case that a student's something catastrophic happened to their sponsor, and their sponsor is no longer able to support them in school, and they were able to prove that, meaning, you know, the government from that country was able to draft documents to show what has happened to this sponsor, so that they can then apply for this hardship employment authorization. Also, there are some programs that will allow some work experience. It really depends. And again, there could be small details about your friend's case that makes them different from yours. And so if you go to the DSO at your school and you ask them about working and they say, no, there's not any options in which you can work right now, they're telling you the truth. They don't want you to not work. They want you to be able to be happy and enjoy your experience here in the US, but they also want you to be maintaining your visa status, which is very important.
Wonderful. So this one's definitely a myth with very, very rare exceptions. Thank you very much, Anissa, for clarifying. And let's go to the next one. Saying to a visa officer, I want to study in the US stay in the US after graduation is actually a good thing. How do you feel about that, Anissa?
Yeah, so I think I've actually referenced this earlier, in saying that the F1 visa is a non-immigrant visa. So that means that the intention of the visa is not to permanently immigrate to the US. And so if at any point the visa officer feels that your intention is to stay, you will have an automatic visa denial. One of the things that they're looking for in your visa interview is always actually going to be strong ties back to your home country. They want to feel confident that when you get done studying and you get done with any work, that you are going to be returning to your home country for whatever reason, whether it's a job or if you own a business or you stand to inherit a business from a family member, or parents that you need to take care of and you're an only child, or whatever. There's so many different ways that you can prove ties back to your home country, and you should be prepared to prove those ties when you go to your visa interview, actually. But if at any point they feel that you plan to stay longer than, your program and your expected work permit in the US, it is definitely an automatic visa denial.
Definitely. So you really do need to prove your ties to the home country, and saying this would just be a cherry on top of I absolutely do not want to intend to come back to my home country. And by the way, as mentioned before, there's no such thing as visa officer wants to hear a specific sentence. They want to hear about you, and they want to hear your story and your reasons and your research as well. Agents or friends can coach me for my interview word to word. For example, I have a friend who passed their visa interview recently, and I have prepared my answers exactly the same way as she did. We're neighbors, so it should work. Would that work, Anissa?
Yeah, so first, I can almost guarantee you are not going to get the same questions that your friend gets. And as Sala said earlier, you want to be sure that you don't give answers that you weren't asked for. So you certainly don't want to answer questions that your friend was given when those same questions weren't asked of you. And again, no matter what, you never want to sound scripted. This was the number one thing that Sala talked about earlier. Do not sound scripted. So when they ask you your name, you absolutely cannot say, my name is Anessa Neal and I want to go to Herzing University to study the Bachelor of Science in Business Management because Herzing University offers flexible classes, has small class sizes, and they're a family environment. That is literally the only question that they're going to ask you, and they are going to deny your visa at that point. So you literally only want to answer the question they were asked. What is your name? My name is Anessa Neal. What university would you like to go to? I would like to go to Herzing University. You don't even need to tell them where it's at. You don't even need to tell them what program you're going to be applying for. They can see all of that on your acceptance documents that you're giving them. So be careful. Do not practice ahead of time. You can think about what your answers would be and things like that, but absolutely do not plan your answers and exactly what you think you're going to say before you go to the interview.
Absolutely. If somebody gave you a script, or you found a script yourself, or created a script with ChatGPT, throw it out. Do yourself a big favor and just throw it out and forget everything that was on the script, because that's the fastest highway to get rejected, really. At the same time, remember that visa officers might even ask questions that are provoking, so things that you really, really didn't expect. And in that case, remember, breathe, you prepared, you're confident, you know why you're going to US, you know why you want to study, so don't let them throw you off guard as well. Visa officers don't look at documents, so they're not important. Anissa, is that correct?
Yeah, I would also say not true. But what I will say is they may not look at everything that you've brought. So you should have the list of items prepared. You know, Mark mentioned earlier, you know, check your embassy. Like you should take all the items that we listed, but also every embassy sometimes do have intricacies in the documents that they would like to see. So you could take them all, but unless they ask you for your document, do not give it to them. But you should be prepared to show them every single document. So again, you should take all your education certificates and graduation certificates. You should take your financial statements and your letters of support from your sponsor. You should take your acceptance letter, obviously, your I-20. Anything that you were issued by the university, you should take that with you. Any of those things are going to be important. But again, the trick is do not give them over to the officer unless the officer asks for it.
Right. So only answer questions you're asked for, not the questions you're assuming, and only give the documents you're asked for, not the documents you're assuming. Really, a very easy formula, and I hope everyone will start following this formula. All right, and with that, we can close our Mythbuster session, and I can already see some insightful questions going into the Q&A, and hopefully we can answer them before we finish this session. And I can see one question coming here. What do you suggest for students who received a scholarship from the university towards their tuition fees? How can they answer regarding this? How can they answer this question? Anissa, would you like to answer it?
So let me make sure I understand. I didn't see the question. So if, oh, okay, I see it came up now. So when a student has a scholarship for the university, it's actually showed on their I-20. So when you're looking at an I-20, you'll see the, on the left-hand side, you'll see the expected tuition and the expected living expenses that the school is expecting each student to have. And then on the right-hand side, you'll actually see the funds that were provided by the student, whether they were self-provided or if they were provided by a sponsor. And then there's also a line for scholarships from the university. And so any scholarships that are issued by Herzing University, and it should be any university, will be shown right there on that line for the schools to see, or the embassy to see. And then it's actually overall deducted from the total needed to go to school. So it helps level out that balance. So that they can see that you have that scholarship money plus any other funds that were provided by a sponsor to study.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And let's then go to the next question. I have already filled my DS-160 and already booked my appointment, but forgot to include one of my social media accounts. What can I do?
You know, Sala, that is a very good question. And I actually do not know the answer to this one. I am not sure if the DS-160 application can be edited once it has been submitted. So I guess my initial recommendation would be to try to log back in and see if you can go in and edit the application in any way. My hunch is that you can. And the reason I think that you can is because I know you can even adjust the university if you decide to choose a different one. But I'm not for sure on that. I think the student will need to log in and see if they can make any adjustments on their own.
Understood. Thank you very much. Regarding social media accounts, if a student deactivated all of their accounts and kept only TikTok account, for example, would this affect their visa decision?
Yeah, so hopefully they just deactivated them and didn't fully delete them. I would recommend that the student go and reactivate those accounts because it has been widely said that deleting those accounts is likely going to result in a visa denial. How did you feel about that, Sala? Do you feel that you've heard the same?
I heard the same, really. That's the advice I would also follow with this one.
Yeah, so hopefully they've just deactivated them and not fully deleted them, and that they can go just reactivate those accounts, and then, you know, attend the interview.
Absolutely. Right. Someone is saying, I recently got a visa refusal. So how can I reapply? Because refusal slots are not opened and I want to reapply for September as my intake.
Yeah, this is a tough one too, but not just for visa refusals, unfortunately. And so I would say you just have to watch the slots. They will open slots for students who have been previously refused. And again, I'll remind you that you can actually go to any U.S. embassy in the world for your interview. We have lots of students from India right now that are actually going to Nepal to take their visa interviews. And last intake, when it was harder to get an interview in Nepal than it was in India, we had students from Nepal going to India to take their interviews. And so if traveling is an option for you, that may be something that you could do as well. But as Sala mentioned, be honest about any prior visa denials if you're asked.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anissa. I see a question here appeared just as a calculation of CVIS fee plus, I believe, I-901 fee, I believe. I'm not sure which one are they referring to, but Anissa, just to clarify, CVIS fee is not paid directly to Herzing, is it?
No, so none of the fees are paid to Herzing. So the CVIS fee is $350, and the DS-160 fee is $185. So I see this question here. It says 901 USD. The fee is called I-901 fee. It's not $901 US. So again, the CVIS fee is $350. The DS-160 fee is $185.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Now, a next question. It's a very intricate case, so I would just advise you to email us at InUni interview request at InUni. I will leave the email address here as well, and we will be able to help you. I see the rest of the questions are currently repeating. There's also a question if Anissa, any predictions perhaps or any feelings of when the slots might reopen for some regions?
Yeah, we have no idea. We are really hoping to see slots open in India really by the end of this week, which, you know, we're here now, or next week. You know, we have no true predictions. That's just kind of what we're sort of hearing will happen. I am hearing that slots in Nepal are opening relatively regularly. And so we have students that I haven't heard any news about it this week, but just last week, for example, students were pretty much able to go in anytime in Nepal and schedule a visa interview, which is very refreshing to hear because that has not been the case since 2020, 2021, 2022, like all the way back until then. Students from Nepal have not just been able to go in and schedule an interview. So that is very positive. However, we are definitely experiencing a lot of challenges in India right now, scheduling any visa interviews at all. Since the visa interview halt, very few visa interviews have been added at all. I'm going to guess somewhere around 500 to 1,000, and that just isn't even 5% of the visa interviews that are needed there in India right now. So if you are in India and you have an I-20 and you are expecting to go to a visa interview there, I would say, you know, be checking that website for appointments very regularly. I would say every day. And I would even say, you know, maybe late at night. I think we're seeing sometimes that around midnight is when we're seeing those appointments get added.
Wonderful. That's very helpful. Thank you, Anissa. I think that concludes our Q&A section, but before we close this webinar, I wanted to ask one last question to both you, Anissa, and Mark from myself. Any last advice or any advice for the students currently going through this visa journey?
Yeah, so so for me, I would say the most difficult thing right now is scheduling a visa interview. So if you don't have an I-20 already, do whatever it is that you need to do. Submit those last documents to get your I-20. If for some reason you don't get a visa interview for the fall, we can very easily defer your I-20 to the next intake with just a couple of quick application document updates. But once those visa interview slots come available, they are going to disappear in minutes. So if you don't have an I-20 in your hand when those visa slots come open, you don't stand a chance. So if you aren't accepted already, I would say, you need to do whatever you can to go ahead and get your documents submitted so that you can get your I-20.
Very helpful. Thank you, Anissa. Mark, anything from you to add?
I would just say take the time, since the visa interview slots are kind of scarce. Take the time to prepare. Do the things that Sela talked about during her part of the presentation, and that way when a slot does open up, you are ready to go and put your best foot forward to hopefully improve your chances of an approval.
Wonderful. Thank you so much both. And thank you so much for doing this webinar today. I hope that for everyone in the audience, this was helpful. I can see from the insightful questions that people were really attentive, and I see how helpful was this webinar. So thank you everyone for joining so much, and have a lovely day, have a lovely evening, or have a lovely morning, depending on where in the world you are. Thank you everyone, and goodbye.
Right. Thank you. Bye.